Exclamation, everybody. Um, so I had a thought. Probably wasn't a very good thought, but we'll see how this plays out. Um, I've spent many years now doing first impressions on games and finding little indie games to kind of give my thoughts on and various other things. Um, but I had a thought that perhaps I should flip the table and sit on the other side for a little bit and actually do something that you won't see very many first impressions YouTubers do, which is I'm going to sit down and try to do a code review of a particular game, or well, a game that's early in development here, that was posted, as you can see on your screen, to r Play My Game over on Reddit. It's called the Vehicular Epic, and what particularly drew me to this one as opposed to other things is that it's written in Java right now. And given that I use Java every day, practically, for work and whatnot, I thought, well, this would be the easiest thing for me to jump into. If I want to try to do something like this where I go through and code review people's stuff, I should probably start in an area that I know pretty well. And also, upon looking at the giving a first overview of the code, I can see that there's a lot of places that I could probably insert my own help, thoughts, impressions. Basically, this is an excuse for me to finally put some kind of programming content on this channel, and still have the channel be about games, because this is technically a game. As you can see here, this Ryan Albano person is doing some sort of racing game, based upon an old Java game called Need for Madness, which I do not know anything about. I do see, though, that it does not appear to be, it does not have any dependencies that I can see. So it's doing all kinds of software 3D rotations and things, which is going to be interesting. And there's some other things in there that I think I can contribute. And this is the one nice thing about this is it's got a GitHub, and it's considered to be open source, so I can kind of just dig around and do a few things here. And maybe if I do something halfway decent, which is a big stretch even for me, then perhaps this I could contribute as back to the development of this. But in any event, this is the idea. There's an IndieDB page. I haven't actually even looked at the IndieDB page. I've only been on the GitHub, and I have not been on the Discord, so I've not been in contact with the dev or anything like that. I'm just kind of just tossing this one against the wall, and you can see it was posted 27 days ago, so I've been really thinking about it for a while here. But if I pop on over to his IndieDB, or I'm sorry, to the GitHub here, you can see it's pretty straightforward. Probably a little too straightforward, but I mean, he's been doing some development. 9 days ago, there were some changes and whatnot, but the project itself is not in a state right now where it would be very easy for someone else to jump into it. And my hope is that perhaps I can offer some insights into how to bring it into a more workable state, I guess. And I'm going to attempt to do it, actually physically do it, and we'll see how far I get with that. And if you're wondering why I'm wearing headphones, it's because I am listening to music on the other computer. So I might throw some kind of music in as background here, but I don't want it to overpower everything else that I'm doing. And also I don't want it to interfere with me talking right now. So here's the deal. We got this GitHub repo. So the first thing I'm going to do is go and get the clone URL for it. which I've just copied onto the clipboard there. I've got the latest Eclipse downloaded. This Eclipse is one of many Java, and C and C++ if you really want to, IDEs out there. And an IDE is a integrated development environment. I'll probably have flyouts and stuff describing what all those things are, but this is basically, think of it as a really, really souped up jalopy editor. And actually, probably Eclipse is probably the jalopy of the editors. It's not the best one out there. A lot of people dislike it. I actually like the way it does perspectives and stuff, which I don't see any other things do. Like I've tried IntelliJ and a few others, and none of them really seem to capture the, all right, all these windows are part of this perspective, and then I can just hide that perspective and go to another one and switch back and forth really easily. But you'll see what I mean as we get into it. We're starting out on the new screen, brand new project, brand new workspace. I've switched to the dark skin, which is something that's actually relatively new for Eclipse. Many people have tried in the past to do dark themes, but have failed, and now this is actually one that seemingly works for the most part. Mostly to not blow your eyes out. Normally I would be in a light theme, but this is trying to be useful here, trying to be kind to everyone's eyeballs. So first things first, we need to get that Git repo down. We need to clone it. So we're going to say clone a Git repository, and it actually already pulled it out of the clipboard for me. And there's what we got there, and I've got my username and password already put in there. And so we're just going to go and say next here, hopefully. And we're going to pull from master. That's the only branch there is. And we're going to configure, so our initial branch is master. This is the directory it's going to throw it into, which is fine. And our remote will be origin. The remote, for those unfamiliar with Git is a source control repository. One of the more popular ones you've got because of GitHub and other things, and also because Linux switched over, was the main contributor to Git and switched over to that a long time ago. The two most popular ones you'll probably run into is Subversion or SVN and Git. There's others. Mercurial is another one that's pretty much the same sort of concept as Git, but it's got its own sort of theories about how to do things. And there's another one that I forget the name of, but it's not very well used often. And if you come onto a project that's really, really old, you'll come across CVS, which is the granddaddy of them all, and begging to be, if you find a project in CVS, it really needs to get moved into something newer. Even just SVN is worlds better than CVS is. But Git is popular because it's distributed, and that's why this whole clone is happening. So in other words, I am taking a copy essentially of the repository, and I'm bringing it down locally, and I can commit to it, I can branch, I can merge, I can do all these things, and then it just happens locally. And then when I'm done, I can say, I could go to GitHub and say I submit a pull request, and then I can try to throw it up on a remote there if I had the ability to do that. That's what this remote name is, origin. So if I were to push to origin, then it would actually push my changes that are in my local repository out to origin. Now, it's not going to work because I don't have access to it, but it's a similar premise to what's going on here. In any event, I think that's everything. That is not. Let's try. This directory is not empty. That's because I tried this once before off camera. Let's just do that. So or latest or something, just so I don't have to jump through any hoops here. And we'll hit finish. And after a moment, there we go, it has cloned it. We have a working tree, and you can actually see where branches and commits and everything have happened, all the latest commits and everything and whatnot, and where they went to and all that stuff. So, and then you get staging and ref logs and all kinds of fun things now. The nice thing about the Eclipse really did not support Git too well before, and now it actually supports it rather well. There's still probably some things I would have to I'd have to jump into the command line for, but for the most part, it does everything that you need to do from the UI now. So with this said, I want to import projects by right-clicking on that, and I want to do. You have to uncheck the use default location. Let me show you. Open Epic, and then you've got to uncheck the use default location and point it at the Git repo, and that. There we go. Select that folder. There we go. Now it will work properly, because it won't try to do anything. Yeah, and you can see it brought in these folders and things. It's adding a git ignore, which we'll need a little bit later. And I'm not going to add these to the source path just yet because I'm going to move things around. But we do have the bin folder, and we're going to hit finish there. So now after all that, we can see that it brought the files over for the project into this project. It's got our JRE set up for me. And the first thing if I look at, say, what is it, ve.java, I think is the entry point. Yeah, and if I look in here, you're going to start to see some things that are kind of, well, it's not, it sees the code and it's syntax coloring it, but it has no idea what to do with it because it's not in the proper, you can see it declares a package called VE, and it's not in a folder called VE. It's not even under the source folder, so it doesn't look at these as source. It's looking at them as though they're text, and that kind of thing. So we got to fix that. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go grab all these guys, highlight them. We're going to say refactor and move, and I'm going to move them under source right now. And now it's starting to look at it and go, oh, there's some packages here, but nothing's really making a whole lot of sense. So there is there's a set of standards that Java developers tend to follow. Sun Microsystems, back when they were the creators of Java back in the day, it's now under Oracle's purview. They had come up with a bunch of standards, like coding standards, for instance, putting an open brace on the same line as the opening declaration, as opposed to on a new line, like you see a lot of old C developers do, things of that nature. One of the standards they came up with was package naming. Now, normally, you name packages after the URL, the website that contains your code. So if you were working for Microsoft, your packages would be com.microsoft. And then from that point on, you can do whatever you want. Usually it's structured in such a way that you can, each project is independent. When you don't have a website in particular that houses your stuff, or that at least only houses your stuff, I should say, it's kind of open-ended. You can do whatever package naming suits you. In this case, he's made the default package VE, but then didn't put stuff under a folder called VE. So my IDE is just going crazy right now. It doesn't know what to do. It expects a default package of nothing, because that's the default package. So we got to fix some of this up so that it's not so crazy pants. Now, there's a reason why I allowed Eclipse to make a source folder, an SRC folder. And that is because a little bit down the line, we're going to introduce a build system into this project so that others do not have to go through the pain that I have to go through right now in getting a project set up for it. part of that is the build system I have in mind has there's a certain standard that a lot of developers now use, that this build system uses, and now because this build system uses it, a lot of Java developers now do this, and that is putting all your source under a folder called src. It actually goes a little bit further than that and saying source main, which is another folder I'm going to introduce here, but you can see where I'm going with that. Let's go make a main folder. We'll say folder, and we'll say main here. We'll go finish. Bam. All right. And I'm going to take all of this stuff. There we go. I just had to make it its own source folder. So move all of these under source main. Wait, let me move these as well. Yes, okay. It's all about seeing what it will actually let you move and not let you move. Cool. All right, so then I can now remove this from the... All right, let's see what I can do here. Build path. Source. Right, so I want to get rid of the source there. There we go. Excellent. Now we have source main, which is what I wanted in the first place. The source folder I can now delete, I think. Or at least, no, I can't delete that because it's going to delete everything underneath it. Anywho, we got the source main now. That's right, this will keep showing up because we can have other things under there that are just regular, outside the scope of actually code here. But we still have our problem with the package, and this is, if you've ever wondered why it takes programmers so long to do things, just look at how long it's taken me so far just to try to get this project into a form that's usable and workable for our purposes. So let's go and so about the package naming. Since we don't have, there isn't really a website that we can point to that is devoted to this code. So we can kind of relax the normal requirements. And it looks like he wants to create a package called VE, and he wants to do it from VE and blah, 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 on up. Normally, the standard way of doing it is to use the original author's name, then the actual game or an acronym that describes the game. So I'm going to go with that because that's actually more of a standardized thing than what package naming we have here now, and because the package naming we have is not really usable in its current state. Once I create the package, it's not a big deal. Everything will just kind of work itself out, but it's just getting to that point here. So source main, so we want a package. Let's do new. Let's do a package. All right. So our package where we want everything to sit in is going to be something.ve. So I'm going to look to see what the original author's name is. So it's Ryan Albano. So that's R-Y-A-N-A-L-B-A-N-O. Is that, did I spell that right? A-L-B-A-N-O. All right. Okay. Yep. Which is a bit unfortunate because we got hopefully nobody reads that as Rye Albano, because that's not going to work. But we can do that .ve, and that will be the top level package here. So finish. And then I can take all these that are in the default package, which you're really not supposed to use for anything, and I can move them now. Okay, I managed to get it to move them, but I had to do it by telling it not to try to update the references to these things, which is fine. We'll just have to fix up the references anyway, one way or the other. Now, I wonder if that will give me the same problem if I move these. So let's see. Why is that? Huh. It's weird that it's not, it's having so many problems with this one little thing, and I don't understand why it would have so many problems here trying to move a project around underneath its own thing. It's just a very strange and weird thing here that it's like the problem that it's giving me. Let's try package. So create a new package and we'll call it converter. Okay, friends, we're a little bit better. There's still a few things when it comes to standards here. First of all, there's no camel case in package names usually. So I'm going to try and I kept the camel case in there just to make the move easier so that the Eclipse wouldn't get too confused with having multiple things to do. But I'm going to rename this, and it should be able to rename these without any problems, I hope. Yeah, right. This project has been nothing but problems here, apparently. Let's rename it. We'll do this. Don't try to update the references. Just do your damn thing. Nope, it will not. A resource exists with a different case. Oh, that sucks. That's right, because we're on Windows, so things are not case sensitive in Windows. So that makes for some fun times here. We're going to be stuck with these wrong-headed package names for a while then. It is what it is for now. I might have to go in and just sort of manually kind of fix things up. Or I'll have to move it into something that sounds the same but isn't the same and then rename it back. Like I'll have to, actually, let's do that right now. What I'll have to do is I'll have to rename it, and I'll have to say, take that E off of there and put a 2 here. Do that. Right? And then this one, rename. Let's do this with the 2 and that. Right? Do that. Okay, and then I got to rename them again to get rid of the 2. Fun times. This is why when you do something like this, do it right the first time, because otherwise you have people like me who are going to have to jump through all kinds of hoops just to fix your stuff that you should have did right in the first place. Okay, so that gets us to a place where we're looking more like an actual proper project now, which is cool and awesome. And there are some errors popping up along the way here that we'll have to take a look at, like camera.java has an error. What is it? Multiple markers, import v cannot be resolved. Yeah, so there's a lot of like import problems now because I've changed all the package names, but I'm not too concerned about that at the moment because we got some other things we're going to have to fix. And we're going to start out with the entry point here, ve.java. First of all, there is a book. It's a very, very good book. It's called Code Complete. I don't know what volume, I don't know what not volume, but what revision it's at now. It was at, I think, revision 2 or 3, the version that I have of it. But it's, I'll leave a link to it in the description, so you can go find it from whatever source I find it from. But it's a very good book that I think every programmer, regardless of whether you're Java or not, should have looked at and know and brought to heart. It does use Java pseudocode as examples, But the concepts described in there are pretty universal in their application to whatever language you're working in. Generally speaking, unless the language you're working in specifically has a different way of doing it, a more standard way of doing what is said in there. And one of those things is classes and variables really should be descriptive. There's a lot of things in here. I see classes I see class VE, I see class U, I see class TE, and there is some comments at the top of here that have been, automatically collapsed by the editor here, where they go into naming systems, and yeah, they're wrong. They're very wrong. Like these don't follow the Java standards. These don't follow any standards, honestly. There are some things like calling file material PM and stuff like that, but honestly, like file input stream is acceptable. You will see people who will do FIS for file input stream. They won't capitalize it though. Capitalizing something implies, if you're an old-timey C person, capitalizing something implies that it is a constant, and in this case it is not. And do not capitalize things unless you intend for it to be a constant, is what I'm getting at there. If you do a public and we can even see it here, he's got a public static final group, right? And he's got it as lowercase, right? That would not fly in most shops. In most shops. Now, this one might fly because it is an object that you're dealing with. Why it's public static final, we'll have to find out as we get closer into it. But so that one might actually fly, but you're really pushing it, right? If you're going to do something that's a constant, like here's a static double game FPS. That's double positive infinity, right? It's not public, so it's package private here. So like there's got to be some kind of consistency in there. I get that modern IDEs will tell you whether or not it's a constant or not by just rolling over it like that, but there's kind of an old-timey convention that says if something is all capital letters, then it's a constant and you can use it anywhere and know that it always has the same value. So when you start doing things like this, you start to throw people like me off, and probably most other developers off when you're doing that. This one, the naming systems word, that's actually called, we have an actual terminology for that. It's called camel case. Like the humps in a camel, your first letter is not capitalized, but the next successive letters of every word are capitalized. So it would be more like camel case, like that. That is camel case. That is what that's called. It's not called word, it's called camel case. Use the proper terminology. So they're okay with that. As far as variables are concerned, that's usually how you do variables. That's usually how you do method names. And how you do a lot of things, honestly. Not always. They have a few examples here where I think they're relatively using it everywhere, but there might be a few examples as we go along where things are a little bit weird when it comes to that. And they've got a note here on enums. Right. Enums are used throughout this project. The IDE may determine some enum fields as unused. Be sure not to remove any of them. They become utilized when the game loads vehicles. When they say they use some enums, they use a lot of enums. To the point where I work with a lot of very talented people. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of very talented people, very experienced people. I myself have about 15 years of experience, actually a little bit more than that, probably closer to 18 years of experience. And I've talked to guys that have much more than that. And I looked at this and I was trying to figure out, why are the enums used so much in this project? I mean, they're used a lot. In fact, this is the first time in my life I've seen an enum used with a main method, an enum with a main method in it, which works because it's just a regular class in Java. It's just basically it's a public static final class is an enum. But why it's being used so often still escapes me. I don't understand. I've talked to others who have even more experience than me, and none of us have ever seen anyone utilize this many enums throughout a system. I mean, way overused, and there's no rhyme or reason to it that we can think of. I mean, the only thing I can come up with is maybe they were trying to save some typing, but I mean, you type the declaration once and then it's done. I don't get what's going on there. And if you really want it a static class, just declare a static class. You know, what's the by creating an enum, what you've done, and it's pretty telling that there's no tests in this project. What you've done is make testing really difficult, like trying to do unit tests. Integration tests you didn't mess up, but making unit tests where you want to test something in isolation and maybe mocking up any objects that it wants to call out to, you just made that really difficult. There's JMock and libraries like that can actually deal with enums now, but they have to do it by bytecode manipulation. So they'll actually change your enum into a non-final class so they can wrap an object around it to be able to dummy out the values coming out of it. And it's not really helping. I'm trying to figure out, I'm really trying to keep an open mind as to because to me, when someone uses this many enums, especially when they're using them and not using any variables in them, like they're declaring variables, but then they're not using the actual enum variables for some reason. I don't know why. It's like either there was not an understanding of how enums actually work, or I'm trying to be as kind and as honest as I can here. I don't know why this is done the way it's done. It makes no sense to me. Like, you have an enum called tournament here. You don't have any enum variables in it. That's why there's a semicolon here, right? But then you've got a variable called stage, you've got a variable called wins, you got a variable called finished. And they're private static final, which means they're private, so who is accessing these is what is just I don't understand how this is supposed to work or what it's supposed to do. It feels like they're trying to hide things, which there's much better ways of doing that. Perhaps they're trying to make it so that, someone writing like code to try to extend like a mod or something, that they can't change the structure of tournament. Which, I mean, if that's the case, then just declare it as a final class. I mean, this is truly baffling to me, and I'm trying to keep an open mind as to what could possibly be the benefit of this, and I really can't find it. But that having been said, in order for me to actually in order for me to be able to properly grok what is going on here in this application, we need to break it up. This class, as I was mentioning about the Code Complete book, Code Complete book talks about standards and stuff. It also introduces the concept of code smells. And the idea of a code smell is that as you're reading through code, and when you get really adept at reading code, you start to have this sense about what is looks right and what doesn't look right. And you might look at something and go, something doesn't seem right here. You gotta get that like spidey sense almost. And then you kind of look at it more and you're like, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And this looks like it's got too many things going on, or this is kind of muddying the water a bit. When you're the sole developer on a project, it's hard to get that code smell because you are the only one working on it. But when you've worked on projects that have had multiple programmers on them for many years, you start to get the idea of, you start to understand that your code is not just for your own consumption, that there's other people who need to be able to read and modify. And there's the old, as my old go-to is, it's 2 a.m., can I read your code? It's 2 a.m., I'm tired, I've been up for 30 hours, can I read your code? Is my standard. And by read, I mean being able to easily understand and modify as easily as possible, and debug and just kind of wrap your brain around as quickly as possible what's going on. So one of the big code smells you get a lot when you, especially with young developers that maybe haven't done a lot, or solo developers, is you get these classes like this VE, which is obviously the entry point to this thing. And I say the entry point because it extends application, which is a JavaFX, the standard JavaFX entry point, right? And it has, let's do a little tour here, shall we? My wheel's still spinning. Here it is. It's got 3,247 lines in it. That's not necessarily lines of code, that's just lines. 3,247. It's also got tons and tons of inner enums, which are basically inner classes, right? And I'm sitting here wondering, why? Why is all of this shoved into one bucket? Because enums, like I said, are just a regular class in Java. They're just a special kind of class. And with that being said, that means that enums can live in their own files. And if enums can live in their own files, why are we shoving them all into this one file here? Because if I look at this file, right, and I say there's a bug in here, and I want to kind of wrap my brain around what we're doing and what it's going, and where this bug is and how it's manifesting itself. Am I really going to go through 3,000 lines of code and understand 3,000 lines of code, or am I going to understand, say, 100 lines of code? Right? This is just the entry point of the application. Why does it have so many little things dangling off of it? Why is it not calling out to these things? Yes, it's important to have a UI. Yes, it's important to have all these other things. But I can't fathom that all of these means the same end. You know what I mean? Like, some of them are probably self-contained and could just kind of live on their own and do their own thing and maybe live in their own package that is a common package to all of them. Especially since I've seen things like tournament and I see units. Like, why is units declared inside the entry point? Like, why is that not, like, what are the units being used for? Obviously it's metric, US, and something else, right? So this must be, like, I guess the speedometer maybe, or something of that nature. So if that's the case, why isn't that under a package that's like vehicles? Like, why you have a vehicles package? Why is units here instead of there? Right? Like, because that's about the vehicle, right? Or perhaps you have a package called UI, which you can see here, there's a public enum UI. So maybe if units is only used by the UI, then perhaps you should have a package called UI that has, the UI in it and units. Why are these disconnected things, or why are these things that are connected thrown into a much larger class that does a lot of other things. That's not how you're supposed to do object orientation, right? You're supposed to compartmentalize things, almost to a sense, almost black box things. Not necessarily black box, but you're supposed to at least have common things together and let them live together, right? Because you've got units, you've got UI, you've got, I think I saw tournament, you've got keys, which is your keyboard keys. Like, what if I was using a controller instead of, what if I wanted to add controller code to this instead of just the keyboard, right? Like, am I going to add another enum in here that's for the controller? Then that's just polluting even more into this thing. Like, why wouldn't you have a package for this? Why are these things are more important standalone, right? Like, these things can stand on their own 2 feet. They don't need to sit inside the main class, right? The main class can call out to them, but they don't need to sit in here. And this is what I'm trying to get at, is in order to bring some sort of rockability back to this class, I'm going to start breaking it up and we'll see what we get. Probably going to break some things along the way, but that's what you got to do, because you got to break some eggs to make an omelet, as they say. Status looks like it would be something that would live in this in the main application, right? Because status is telling you what state you're in. Are you in a match? Are you in the menu? Are you in the main menu? Are you looking at the credits? There's some map loading stuff in here, which I guess makes sense too. Map error, map view, map viewer. Yeah, I guess these kind of vehicle viewer. Yeah, these make sense as a status, and status makes sense to be in here, I would say. For now, we'll see if it withstands the test of time. Units, though, is skedaddle. That's got to go. I'm gonna assume. There's some assumptions I'm gonna have to make, because I haven't grokked the entire breadth of this game yet. I don't know everything that's going on here, so I'm gonna make some mistakes. I'm gonna move some things, and then later on be like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have moved that. I should probably move that back. That's part of it. That's part of how you do things, right? You just kind of move them out, wrap your brain around them, and then later on you're like, oh, let me revisit what I did there and let's refactor that again. So first things first, I'm going to make a UI package because I think that's important enough to have it. So we're going to go VE, and then we're going to say new package, and I'm going to say .ui. Bam. All right. In there, I'm going to take this, I'm going to go and say new enum, and I'm going to call it, should I call it UI? So here's, no, I should be more particular about how I do things. I don't really like, because again, we're getting into the capitalization versus non-capitalization. So I'm going to call it user interface, if I can spell here, user interface. Bam. All right, and then we're going to go where we were here in VE, and we're going to just copy out the contents of this. I believe, where is the end point on this? It's down there. That's one of the nice things about having an IDE, is it will highlight your endpoints, your end of scope there. So I'm just going to do Control X, and I'm going to pop one over here, and we're going to pop it right into there. Bam. And the other thing about having a nice IDE is it will automatically do the imports for you, so you don't have to do them yourself. Now, the other thing is, and the other reason why this kind of jumped out at me is because there's one of the main points that's driven home in the book Code Complete is the idea that comments lie. And they say comments lie because most of the time when somebody refactors something, they don't often change the comment that was around it. So your comment might say something like this is the only places this is called in, and then someone refactors it later on and now it's called by something else, or someone adds another place that calls it and never updates your comment, right? So comments tend to lie, which is why you don't see a lot of people putting tons of comments in. One of the worst kind of comments you can do is to have something like this, right? Because what you're doing here, this is the equivalent of is if I put here and enum, right? No shit. This is a no shit comment, right? It's like, this is the user interface. Well, if this is the user interface, why didn't you call it user interface? Why did you call it UI? The fact that you had to put a comment there to tell somebody else that this is the UI tells you that you named it poorly, right? There is such a thing as self-documenting code. It'll make you cringe every time somebody says it, like, we're trying to make some self-documenting code. But there is such a thing as making variable names that are, worthwhile. Variable names that actually speak for themselves. And if you have to do something like this, you're not naming your variables well enough, is what I'm getting at. That's also the same with this. Don't ever do this. Don't ever do end while or end for or end enum or end if. Just don't. All right. People know how things end, especially now with IDEs. IDEs will tell you where the end point is. Just don't. Just don't pollute your code with something like that. It's not necessary. All right. So we got rid of that. So that's one thing down. And now you see there's a lot of errors here because can't find units and other things. Units I would think would go with the UI. I'm going to assume that units is only a UI thing right now. Also I meant to mention, you just saw that all this code just reformatted itself when I hit save. I have save actions on in Eclipse, which will format the code using the default formatter, which is the format that Sun Microsystems came up with as far as, back in the day. I may have some tweaks to that as we go, but for the most part, I'm going to leave it formatting like Sun Microsystems formats things, because that's mostly what you're going to see around. There are people who will change the formatting around. I tend to change it so that it doesn't try to break lines up that are more than 60 characters, because I have usually a large screen. But speaking of which, I should probably make this a lot bigger so you guys can see what the heck I'm doing here. I just realized, because I made this text bigger so you could see it, but then I kind of forgot. I've been doing this whole video and you're probably squinting what the hell is he looking at? Let's hopefully this is a little bit better. My apologies for not expanding it further. But yeah, that's what happened there. I did save actions. The save actions also organizes imports, so it alphabetizes all your imports, and it does a few other things that I've turned on. All right, so we did our job of at least getting that out of there. There's more stuff to be done here, but let's just do a first pass and try to get what we can with what we've got. So I've got the user interface out there. We know now that it really cares about units, right? So we're going to go back to this class. We're going to say, here's our units, and I'm going to make that its own class. I'm actually going to just copy this out. Yeah, because I'll let Eclipse make the units class, or enum, I should say. So we'll go here, new enum units under that package. There we go, and bang, there it is. Done and done. We now have a units. So this guy should now be able to see units, and he does, as you can see, automatically, because they're both in the same package. You don't need an import for it because it already knows that package, everything that's in it. So there you go. This is the field VE options units is not visible. right, because we've moved this out of the VE thing. Again, we'll have to figure out. I'm not worried so much about making something that's going to compile, because obviously this isn't going to compile. I'm more worried about wrapping my brain around what they're actually trying to do here. So this was accessing probably another enum. Yeah, it's got the E as the thing there, called options units. So let's go over here and let's get rid of this guy, right? And let's see if we can find an options enum here somewhere. Actually, that'd probably be easier looking the outline for it. So let's sort this puppy. There we go. All right, options, where are you at? So we have options here, and what is this? This is the game's options, is what this is. So this has a lot of references to the UI, because the options menu would be a UI thing. So the question is, do we put the options menu under the UI package? Do we put it, or does it deserve its own package? And I'm kind of leaning towards we could probably put this under the UI package, because they are still very similar to one another, or at least similar enough to one another, because your options are generally changing UI stuff, although they are also changing your keys and stuff like that, I imagine. Yeah, there's like keys left, driver's seat. I mean, it could be its own. It could be its own thing. You know what? Since it does change more than just the UI, let's promote it to its own package. So we'll have a VE, and then we'll do package, and we'll say dot options here, and I will make an enum called options, and actually it should be well, we'll call it options. I guess I was thinking like maybe I should call it options menu, but no, we'll just leave it as options for right now, and then if I need to change the name of it later on, we can change the name of it later on to be a little bit more descriptive. That's the word I'm looking for. Okay, where does this end at? Right there, probably. Let's see. Is that true? Did that end right there? It looks like it. Okay. So over here, we'll paste this in. Bam. There it is. Okay. This has references to units, which is fine because we can pull in that package if I can find it. Oh, I see what's going on here. So let's get rid of these because it tried to fix them up, but it didn't fix them up properly. Now if I look here now, there we go, import units from the UI. Bam, so that will fix that anyway. We still have a bunch of other errors. Namely, it's referencing UI, but it really should reference user interface. So let's do, so Control 2 and then R, right, to refactor this and say user interface. You can see it changed every reference to it. That was why I did that Control 2R. And enter. All right. Now, if I hover over this, we can do an import of user interface. Bam. And that's now fixed. And this, my friends, is why you use IDEs. You can complain all you want about how hard it is to get an IDE set up and how much easier it is to just work in a text editor or something like that. But when you want to get something done fast, well, not fast, efficiently, sometimes it's better to bite the bullet there. Okay, and then it's going to complain about fields not being visible because those fields are package private. You know, again, not worried about that right now because I'm going to end up probably not having them be enums. I'm probably going to make them actual classes because they don't make any sense as enums. There is no reason to have this and then have that. Like if you see something like that, someone made an enum and then didn't actually declare any enumerations in it, something is wrong. That's like a big code smell. That's almost, there is a concept of coding by side effect, and that's when you call a method just to get it to do one thing that you want, but then you don't care about anything else. So for instance, if I call, say, get players, let me think, get players vehicle. And I don't actually, and the method itself brings me back the player's, the texture for the player's vehicle plus all the stats about the player's vehicle. And I call that just because I want one stat from the player's vehicle, but I don't want the whole texture and the whole object to come down. But it does come down because I'm calling it by side effect. Instead of having another method that just gives me the metadata on the player's vehicle that I want, I'm now calling the generic one that gives me everything about it. And now you're taking the performance hit of reading the player's vehicle data and the object data from the disk and all that stuff, and probably some other processing going on to it, just to get one little piece of information instead of writing the code necessary to just get that one little piece of information that you needed. So that's coding by side effect. This feels like that very much. I don't know yet because I haven't seen why this is going on this way, but I suspect my spidey sense is tingling in that particular respect there. All right, so that was way down at the bottom of that class too. Okay, so we got status. I'm going to leave there. We got get vehicle index, which I'm going to leave here. Get vehicle name is a regular method. We got keys. This is our controls. So I am going to make a package called input. There we go. Input. Is that a good thing? I'm debating that now. Should I call it input or should I call it I wonder. I mean, we can always fix it later if I make a bad choice here. I think I'll just call it input for now. And I'll change the name of the enum from keys to keyboard. And we'll see what goes with that. So let's do finish on this guy. And I will make an enum, as I said earlier. And I'm going to call it keyboard instead of keys, because that doesn't make any sense out of context. All right. And then we're going to go grab the guts of this puppy and paste them in there. And there's a lot of guts to this puppy. All right, X, Control X. So where did that? Okay, that looks like that was the correct amount to paste out. That's the other problem with having a class that's this big and this cluttered, is that half the time you don't know if you copied and pasted enough of the code, or if you're missing something. Also, the spacing was weird on this. It was like one space in between things, which is not usually what happens. Usually it's like 3 or 4. default's usually 4. A lot of people I've worked with tend to like 3 spaces between things. Spaces, not tabs. Don't ever do tabs. Oh my God, you'll get your head cut off, because a lot of people, when they look at something, they look at it in a text editor, and then it just, the tabs are all off because it's a tab instead of spaces. But most modern editors IDEs will convert any tabs. If you tell it to, we'll convert any tabs to spaces, to the appropriate number of spaces. So better to have that on. Okay, so we got the keyboard code over here now, it looks like. I'll say if KC equals key code KC, yeah, oof. We got our work cut out for us, friends. We got our work cut out for us. Right, so then where does scene come from? Enum constant scene. I think scene is coming from JavaFX. Yeah, JavaFX scene. Yeah. So we'll have to work on that. That's going to be that bothers me a lot, because here's another anti-pattern. Your keyboard class is now dependent on JavaFX. Let me repeat that. Your keyboard class, the class that is supposed to just deal with handling keyboard events, is now dependent on JavaFX. Bad news. You want as few third-party dependencies as you can handle, as makes sense, right? If you're working on a keyboard and you have to handle keyboard events, send the key event to it, right? So this key event here, right? This is a JavaFX key event, right? That should be anything to my brain. Anything that is JavaFX related should be kind of massaged out to its own sort of integration somewhere. Preferably, it should be farmed out to, say, the main method, the main class, the VE class. The VE class is always going to be dependent on JavaFX because it is the main entry point and it extends the application, right? So in there, you probably want to deal with key events and send them off to wherever they need to go. Now, there is a school of thought that says, well, but then you're kind of mixing your peanut butter and your chocolate a little bit there, because those are keyboard events and they really should be handled by a keyboard class. Yes. But what I'm saying is, put most of your logic, most of your business logic in your keyboard class and separate out the dependency on JavaFX. You don't necessarily need that in there. It's not, you might think it's saving you something in the long run, but in reality, it's probably not saving you as much as you think, especially when it comes to, you're going to want to refactor things a lot. And the less third-party dependencies, even first-party the less JVM dependencies, the special JVM dependencies you have in a particular class, the easier it is to move it around and refactor it. And if you're always thinking about how can this be easy to, it also makes it easier to test, right? Because right now, if I wanted to test this keyboard class, I'd have to fire up a JavaFX context and I'd have to run with it. Whereas if I got JavaFX, if I massaged it out of this and just had to deal with the keys coming in, even if I have to make my own pseudo key event thing that's just mine, then I can test it in isolation and know that it will work given the inputs that I give to it. And as long as those inputs that I give to it in the tests match what would come out of JavaFX, or what I would expect to come out of JavaFX, then I know my tests are good. and I know that the code is good. It's just, these are the kinds of things you come across when you actually try to pull things out and make them readable by others. Anyway, so that gets our keys out of there. Then we got mouse, which makes sense. And actually, mouse is actually a fine name for it, because that's what it is. So we'll do another enum over here in the input thing for mouse. Bam. And I will go and pull this guy out of here. Like so. It's a lot smaller enum. And there we go. All right. And again, this one has some dependencies on scene, but we can, if I can massage them out of this, I can massage them out of keyboard. That's you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a dodgeball. Is basically sometimes what happens here. Then we have map. And I'm guessing by map they mean the actual map that the course that you're driving on. I would say this is not something that you will see written really to anywhere. This is not really a hard and fast naming convention thing, but it's something that I tend to consider, and I think a lot of veteran programmers tend to consider when they're naming things. You might want to avoid naming something ambiguously. Now, you might think map obviously makes sense because you're loading maps. However, in Java, you have maps. You have hash maps. You have linked hash maps. You have the concept of a map. You actually have an interface called map. Someone looking at this might think, at least for a second or two, that you're referring to a Java hash map or regular map, and not a map, as in the course or the track that your vehicle is running on. So in this case, this is one of those things, and this is not a hard rule. This is not something you'll read in any real books necessarily. But in this case, I wouldn't name it map. I would name it track. Even if there's no track per se there. Or I would name it course even. Map or course probably is the better name, because track can also mean other things. But course is probably the best way to name this. And yeah, that's being a little bit nitpicky. And I acknowledge that, but again, you got to think 2 a.m. Am I going to look at, if I'm looking at something really quickly and there's a bug, am I going to get potentially confused if I've been up all night working on something, or someone else has been up all night working on something? Is there a potential for some small bit of confusion there? These are kinds of the things that you have to look at. And this is one of those things that you're not going to catch it the first time around. Like if I were typing this out myself and doing this, I might call it a map. But I have enough experience to know that after I'm done a session, go away from it. When I come back again with a fresh perspective, a fresh brain, reread over everything you've done and see if it makes any sense. Like, I follow sort of the novel pattern of writing code, where you write a first draft, and then you write a second draft, and then a third draft, and a fourth draft, and however many drafts you need until you finally get to something that looks like it's not only works, but B, looks like something that will be easily grokkable, easily maintainable. This kind of thing you probably wouldn't catch on the first draft. You might not even catch it on the second draft. But at some point, you're going to look at it and go, maybe I should name that something differently because this name is a bit unfortunate. And that's when you really have to, but you have to have the discipline to come back and reread your stuff again and make sure that, okay, well, let's make sure that someone else, if it were someone else looking at this, they would understand what's going on here. So what we're going to, that was a long-winded way of saying we're going to have, so maps probably are, I would say, deserve their own package, I would say. So we'll say new package, and I will say, we'll say course here is the package name, or courses. Courses. Sure, we'll call it courses. Yeah, because package names tend to be plural usually. So we'll do that, and then I'll say new enum, and then we'll say course. Bam. All right. So then we'll grab everything out of this map, and we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Still not quite there. Still not there. Now we're there. All right. Do that. Hopefully I got just one enum in that, and that's more than I bargained for. Where the heck did it go? Okay. Yeah, it looks like it. And then we'll paste that into here, and I'll get rid of that extra space that it puts in, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, we got a few things that don't make sense, but that's fine. Viewer and point and vehicle and tournament, but otherwise, this has got scene 3D, so this has got more Java effects in it. Yeah, I can see that this would have some dependencies, but again, that's for another pass. That's not for the first pass here. The first pass really right now for me is just trying to, again, bring a little bit of sanity to what was there. All right, so we'll get rid of that. But I'm making mental notes of things that should be things that I guess could be looked at in the future. So now tournament. What is this? This looks like this is holding what stage you're in, how many wins you've had. So this looks like statistics, right? And whether or not you're finished the tournament and stuff. So it's like an overarching container for your current progress. So what would be a good place for that? Would that be something that would go under courses? Probably not. I'm going to say that it's a game mode. So I'm going to have a package here called game modes. For now, it might not be the best way of naming it, but I think that's decent enough. And I'm going to call it tournament, as I have here. And then we'll just pull this over into there and just do the minimum possible right now until I can really wrap my brainstem around what's going on here. And then we got sounds. So obviously we should have a whole package for, you got sounds and you got music. So we're going to have a package called sound system, basically. So sound system. There you go. And in there we'll have sounds and we'll have music as two enums. So if I spell it correctly, sounds. Sound. There's a public static sound. What does that? Where's that go from? There's a sound class. Oh, there is a sound class. Okay. Huh. Okay, so then what is sounds doing? It looks like it's doing effects. So it's got rain, tornado, tsunami, fire, boulder, meteor, storm, wind. So and it's got vehicle, which I imagine vehicles can have their own like engine sounds. So I'm going to assume that this is sound effects or just effects instead of sounds. So again, this is another one of those where I'm trying to name it properly because, you know, given what it actually is and not trying to be more specific about what this is and not so general. So under sound system then we'll do an enum and we'll call it effects rather than sounds, right? And then I'll go grab the guts of this, right? Which is not very big. And we'll pop that over here, like so. There's also an E class. What is that E class? Let me guess. There's probably an FX class. What is that E? Is that under utilities? No. Where is E defined? E.storm.thunder. Environment. It's under environment. Okay. We'll get there. We'll get there. Can't fix everything today, that's for sure. Rome was not built in a day. All right, and then music seems like it can still be called music. Yeah, it's actually loading music from file input stream, loading MP3s and stuff. Okay. All right, so we will call this music then for now under the sound system. So enum music, if I could spell. There we go. And let's copy this out there. And bango there. What is player? Oh, I bet that's okay, JFX media. That must be the JavaFX media thing. Okay, player state event. Yeah, I bet that's a JavaFX. No, there's a VE player. Is that the actual player? No, it can't be. JLayer. It's gotta be the music player, probably. You can't this again, naming conventions, right? You can't name a class player and have it not be the player, right? If it's a music player, call it a music player. Don't call it the player because you have a player, right? You have non-player characters and you have a player character. You know, like, you know, just you gotta name things more descriptively if you want other people to be able to. You gotta be more precise in your naming if you want other people to be able to figure out what the hell you're doing. Java layer exception. The frig? Oh, it's a custom exception. All right. We'll have to look at that. I'm wondering. It must be a. It must be a. I'm wondering if that's a checked exception or a runtime. We'll find out eventually. Okay, so music. We can get rid of that now. Yes, he's got a run here. Will not work if moved to launcher. I wonder why. Maybe it's because you have too many enums. There's another clue. If you put something in here that's like will not work if moved, you did something wrong. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just, you have to say this will not work here, then more than likely you've done something wrong, especially if you don't have third-party stuff coming in. If it was a third-party class and it didn't work somewhere, it might be just because you're not following the standards. But if you don't have any third-party libraries, which they don't here, which is something I'm going to change eventually, then you did something wrong. You done screwed up. Inner animation timer. So we're dealing with animation in here too. JavaFX animation timer. Okay. What extends animation timer, right? Oh geez. Okay. This has this is referring to pretty much every other thing that we just moved. Go figure. But we're definitely not leaving this in here. That's for damn sure. I'm sorry, but this is no bueno. We're not leaving this in here. Let's see where's the endpoint for this? Where is the endpoint? It's right there. Right before handle exception, right? Of course it is. Of course it is. Why would you? Never mind. Be kind. Be kind to memory. Be kind to your fellow developers, because they will help you at some point. I mean, this is good for me to be able to do a full code review for it's. I do some code reviews, but I've worked with a lot of experienced guys, so our code reviews are generally pretty tame. You know what I mean? It's been a while since I've worked with someone who is maybe new and needs a lot more help with their code reviews, and the code reviews are a lot more extensive and far-reaching. When you're working with people that have been doing this stuff, they've been doing Java for forever, that tends not be as needed. It's usually just like one little thing here or there, and it's usually some kind of logic bomb that they didn't see along the way, or they're re-implementing a method, or re-implementing some code that already exists somewhere else that maybe they didn't know about, and then you just point them in the right direction and they use that and everybody's happy, So this is actually good. This is good practice, because it's been a long time since I've had to do like an extensive code review like this, and it's nice to exercise the old brain cells from time to time. So we're definitely going to have, animation is important enough that it should be its own package. So we're going to do package here, and we're going to say, what should I call it? I guess I should just call it animation, right? Animations? Yeah, just call it that. And I'm going to take this entire class. We're moving the entirety of this class, friends. Inner animation time. Maybe we're not moving the entirety of it, but I need to name the class something. I don't know why it's private static final or private static. It's one of those things that does not need to be private static. Doing a full class. burns my ass too is that it's got a constructor. It's private static, but it's got a freaking constructor. We're not going to make it private or static right now. We're just going to leave it as public, and then we'll figure out what it should be. Yeah, we'll figure out what it should be later, because it's going to be... I know everything's going to be calling it in a static context, but screw it. This is not... There's a bunch of smells here right now, and I'm not going to make things worse for myself later on. It's better that it be broken so that I see that as broken, and then I can fix it as we go. So this is an animation timer. So I guess we'll just call it, I mean, do you call an animation timer? What are we animating? That's the important thing here. What exactly is being animated? The camera? We're setting the field of view on the camera. We're setting gain on the music. Well, I see what they're doing. So this is not really... It's not really an animation time. I mean, it's an animation timer, but it's not really... It's a generic tick is basically what it is. So every tick, every animation tick, quote unquote, the main stuff is being calculated. Which is not a great idea. Some things have to be on the animation frame. But what happens here is, and the reason I say it's not a great idea is because like they've got the movement speed and everything tied to it, which I don't think is the right thing to do. Because what that means is if you're on a particularly, if you're on a particularly slow computer, all the animations and stuff are going to go slowly, which is, but all the physics and everything is going to go slowly as well, which might be okay. But the problem comes if you're on a really fast computer. I mean, I'm sure they probably top this off at like 60 or something, right? But if you're on a really fast computer, then all your physics and stuff are going to go really crazy fast, right? Yeah, they've got FPS. If FPS is less than 30, then 0.75, else 1.05. Okay. Huh. So yeah, if the current frames per second is less than 30, then it doesn't hold it back. But if it's greater than 30, then it goes at normal, like slightly faster than normal speed? Question mark. Render level, maxed FPS. Render level, true. Yeah, they're trying to handle that. That'll be something I'll have to figure out. I can't figure out exactly how to do that. But that being said, this is not... It is an animation timer, but it's really doing more than just animation. It's everything's being timed off of it, like the network. Like you do need a timer like this, especially when you've got network stuff going on, because everybody's got to be on the same... You're going to get lag and stuff if people are off of the timer and things. So it really comes down to just naming this class properly. And I'm going to say... Huh. I'm kind of thinking that I don't necessarily even want to call the package animations. I'm thinking I want to call the package core, even though there is a core. there. Or call it core loop. Yeah, let's rename this. Did I modify this? I guess I did. Oh yeah, I have. All right, let's just refactor, rename. Let's call this core loop for now until I can figure out a better name for that. And then that means I will call this class tick. Frame tick. Yeah, I'll just call it that for now. Because again, it's not the most ideal name I could have given. Also, I need to extend. I did that wrong. We need to extend animation timer. I could do that in the class creation thing. I just forgot. But by copying and pasting it, it'll automatically put the import in there. And then this is just telling me that it has unimplemented methods, but we'll get that in a second when we go here and copy or cut this out here. Nice big class. All right, let me make sure I did that right. I think so. All right, and then paste. There's that so far. Okay, I'm not gonna fix anything yet. I'm just gonna leave it the way it is for the moment. Leave it broken. All right, so that's out of there. We got private side void, handle exception, which tournament stage, I don't know, prevents recursive shutout if bugged vehicle is causing such. Now we'll leave that here for now because it's just a method on the main enum here. Then vehicle select. There's another thing. Enum vs vehicle select. So is this looks like a UI thing, right? Or is this a network thing? I mean, it's got a lot of references to the network. I mean, this could be either, right? It could be either a UI thing or a network thing. It looks like there's a lot of like making the network ready and stuff. UI page. All seam. Vehicles and match. Oh God, why are we drawing rectangles and stuff? Keys down. Vehicle model. Escape in use. Rotate. This is a good question. Is where does this go? Does this go under vehicles with everything else? I'm kind of leaning towards no. Also, where's the end of this? Oh, it's all the way down there. I'm kind of leaning towards no on that. I think potentially this should be under UI. Because your vehicle selection is technically a user interface thing, right? you would, I mean, you're selecting vehicles, it would be something like that. So I'm going to, for the sake of argument, I'm going to put this under the UI, and then if that's not really an appropriate place for it, then we'll find a more appropriate place for it. So we're going to call it, actually call it vehicle select. There we go. And paste all that in. I just copied out of there. Save it. Okay. We're getting there, friends. It's taken forever and a day. Again, if you've ever wondered, why does it take people so long to write games and programs and things? Well, here you go. It's most of our time is being spent trying to grok what is going on here. So viewer, we've got enum inception here. We've got an enum inside of an enum for some reason. Viewer vehicle. Viewer vehicle. Is this, what is this? Is this the vehicle viewer? Is that what this is? Because there's in use, there's XY, XZ, everything. Run gameplay vehicle. Yeah, text vehicle viewer. And by the way, we're going to have a run through here where we do the text properly in this game, because all the text is hard coded. In the wrongest way, it could be hard coded. And I'll have to go through and make a pass and actually use, you know, internationalized bundles and stuff, because that's the proper way to do it. But we'll get there. Reset graphics, scene 3D, set translate, ambient light, keys up, keys down. Yeah, I'm guessing this is definitely the vehicle viewer. So what we gotta figure out, first of all, we gotta figure out where to put it. And this is definitely going to be under UI, I think, because it's definitely a UI thing. The enum inside the enum is just burning my ass right now. It's just like, it is just burning my butt so badly right now. I don't. And then there's map viewer. Run map viewer. Is that part of the outer enum? Where does the outer enum stop? That is my question right now. Down there. Okay, so yeah, it is part of it. All right, we're gonna leave the enum inside the enum for the moment, until I can figure out why the hell this is the way it is. But we're gonna say, we're gonna cut that out of there, and under UI we're gonna do new enum vehicle viewer. Then we're going to paste that all in there and just save it and mark it as something to come back to. All right, do that. Oh, one thing I want to do, and this is a good thing for people watching here. See, this is the vehicle viewer we just made, and I want to come back and revisit this enum vehicle. So one of the nice things that a lot of modern IDEs have, oh, okay. I heard a noise and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm on the other computer. The noise came up. One of the nice things that modern IDEs have is the ability to read certain tags in your comments. So I can go here and I can say, fix me, figure out what to do with this nonsense, right? And you can see it kind of highlighted that little tag there. And there's a couple different keywords you can use. But basically what that allows me to do is if I go under show view and I look at tasks, it didn't actually work. Oh, that's interesting. Normally it would show up under tasks. Let's see what the filters say. To-dos. Oh, it's okay. So if I do new configuration and XML task, blah, 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 blah. Where's that? Types. Why is there types there? I don't know why. Rename. Let's do fix me. Will it show it? No, it won't. That's weird. That's weird. That used to work. Let me do to do. See if it sees it. Yeah, it sees to do. Yeah. Well, that's basically you can see how that's working there. I think most of the filter show all elements on it. That's weird. That's weird. Okay. Whatever. Most IDEs know Fix Me as a thing where they'll show up under your tasks menu here. Eclipse shows to do, and I think NetBeans and stuff also knows about to do. So you can use that. I used to know Fix Me right out of the bat, but whatever. But you can see you can configure it so that it will read certain things from your comments and put them all into a list here. And then when you double click it, it takes you to that line. So you have your tasks here and you can see what's going on. Very useful when you've got something and you're like, oh, I got to revisit this at some point in the future. And you can just throw a to-do on it and say, revisit this. And then you've got it all in here, and then you can jump around to whatever line and what file it has and all that stuff. Again, use the tools that are at your disposal. They actually help out quite a bit. They're complicated, and you're not going to find everything, but it's they do generally try to be helpful. Run paused. So these are all part of the outer thing. All right, match. So match would be probably a game mode, right? Like a network match, a multiplayer match. Is this only multiplayer, or is it? No, it's got tournament stage, tournament wins. Oh, tournament finished. Arrow, direction log, network mode, blah 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 blah. Destruction log. Heads up display. Score, kill, time left. So that's really holding all the things for the current match. Run match end info. Process stunt. Okay, stunt rolls. Destruction log. Okay. So all this has to do with, this is basically your game mode, right? Trying to see where match started at here. This is why you don't put so much stuff in one class. Okay, status. Wait, where? Outline. I lost it. Here it is. Match. Let's see where this ends at. It ends not there. Not there. Not there. There it is. Ends right down there. Alright, we'll scroll back up and get all this in our selection. Alright, so I guess I'll call it match for now. I mean, that seems reasonable. It does reference tournament for some reason, but you know, we'll see. Tournament's already underneath game modes, so we'll throw this in there as match. We'll do that and say match right now, and pop that into there and let it do its thing. Okay. Now, destruction log. Sounds like the scoring, maybe? Or statistics? Probably the scoring. Names, name, colors. Update. Run land menu. Print writer. Network outs. Vehicles and match. UI selected. Cursor crosshair. Fill rectangle. So I'm get host game join game. Target host is your port number. Run how to play. So this is basically UI stuff. So this is why do they call it destruction log? Is that is this whole thing destruction log, or am I just going cross-eyed? Oh, I am just going cross-eyed. My guess is that this is used for scoring. So I'll probably put this under let's do game modes, and then let's do another package, and we'll call it scoring for now, because I'm guessing that that's what this is purpose is. Now, I wouldn't call it destruction log like that, but let's call it let's call it score tracker, because destruction log seems weird to me. I mean, I get where they're going at with it, but it feels like it's not a we'll see. We'll see. I'm getting the feeling like it's not really. It's really the score tracker, but they call it destruction log because it's how many times you've destroyed another player. But then, wouldn't there also be something about laps and stuff? We'll see. We'll see. I'm just going to go with that for the moment. This might be the wrong thing to call it, but we'll find out once I can figure out what is happening. All right, so then these other things were just part of the main. The run land menu and stuff are part of the main thing here. Run how to play. See, you know, this should be its own UI class, but it's not. Sounds UI play, yeah. Like things that should be their own class are not, and that's going to be something else I have to work on. Credits is definitely going to be a UI thing. So let's get the end of the credits here. Down to the end of the credits. There it is. And we'll pop that out of there and pop that into the UI. And we'll call it, yeah, I guess we can just call it credits. I mean, that's a decent enough name. You're not going to really call anything else credits, probably, unless you have a currency in the game that you're calling credits. But you'd probably call it something else internally, and it would be under a different class anyway. All right, so got that out of there. Stack void reset. That's for reset graphics. That's all JavaFX things that are needed. Deny expensive in-game call. For performance reasons, this call is not allowed during gameplay. Wow. Huh. Well, that's an interesting method. Status play, status replay. Huh. Okay. I'm curious as to who calls that. Let's see. Let's see if it can figure it out right here. Control Shift G. Okay, this is all the references to this. Potential matches, because it's having trouble figuring out if they're matches or not because of how I've moved everything around. Nodes, add node. Deny expensive in-game call. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Get low resolution. It's just straight up calling it. That's weird. So it's just straight up calling that and then it's doing stuff. Why is that? Oh, I see. Oh, okay. So it's calling it and then it's saying if we're playing the game or we're replaying the game, then it'll throw an illegal state exception, which is a runtime exception. Yeah. So it'll throw illegal state exception, which will then prevent this logic from running. So when you're playing the game, you can't get a low resolution image, apparently. For some reason. But I guess I imagine there's a good reason for that. But this is kind of, I can see what they're doing there. I wouldn't necessarily do it that way. Like I wouldn't necessarily just throw an exception and hope for the best. But then again, you don't know why it's being called at its certain point, so maybe you would throw an exception there. This is kind of borderline as to whether or not it's appropriate to throw an exception here or not, because you want the game to basically, the game has somehow gotten into a state that it shouldn't be in or was never intended to be in, and so you're trying to just halt the works. So I can see that. I can see that being a thing. Anyway, so it looks like I've cleared out all of the enumerations except for status, which seems like a decent one to have in here. Got them all out of the main class, so we can actually kind of wrap our brain around what's actually going on in the main class and other things, and look at what's happening in these other classes and start to refactor things a bit. So we had, 3,000 lines before, and now we're down to, we had 3,200 lines, now we're down to 952, and that's not lines of code, that's just lines. So I'd say that was a decent chunk of stuff that we've just kind of moved into its own area. There's a lot more here that's I feel like there's a bunch of methods here, like run land menu and stuff, that could be their own classes, but that's going to take a little bit more thought process and a little bit more kind of sticking around and figuring out how all the innards of this is working. All right, but you can see here that let me minimize all this. You can see we've now got a source main thing, and we've got a bunch of packages now, and the packages actually make a little bit more sense. We've got, although there's a few here like converter and stuff that were just brought over from the other one, but you can see like, hey, we've got an input package now, and it's got keyboard and mouse. Hey, that makes sense. You know, we've got a UI package. It's got credits and units, which I forget. Oh yeah, units. Yeah, that's fine. Credits and units and user interface and vehicle select, the vehicle viewer. You know, things are starting to make a little bit more sense now. We still got a long way to go to really make a decent refactoring here. This has been like the lowest common denominator refactoring I could have done, and we're still not at a point where this could be brought into a like another developer could easily clone the Git repository and have this run. I haven't even brought in the build yet. And the reason I haven't brought the build in yet is because this is not going to build in its current state. You can see there's a bunch of errors right now. So there's really not any point in bringing the build system in yet until I can actually make it build normally. So we're going to have to leave that as a little dangling participle for the next episode. This one, I'm sure, is going to be a bear of an episode to try to edit together. It's going to be a nice, really, really long one because there's been lots and lots and lots and lots of refactoring here, and it's only been the same thing over and over again, pretty much. But that's just the way it is, friends. This is, if you've ever been curious as to how development works and why it takes so long to do things, perhaps this will give you at least a little bit of an insight into why it takes so long to do things. Also, I'm hoping that if you're new to programming, even if you don't program games, which I don't program games on a normal basis either, but even if you're new to programming, perhaps I have imparted a little bit of wisdom and maybe helped out a little bit. It's more of a showing you how my brain works a little bit here and there, not necessarily just saying things. I'm actually showing legitimate examples here, and showing you how to get set up on set up initial projects, and especially projects that aren't set up well to have more than just one programmer on them. We're getting there. We're getting to a point where this could be something that could have multiple programmers come in and just kind of bang away at it and not have everybody stepping on each other's toes. I mean, that's the other reason for pulling everything out of that one class too, is now that we have these multiple classes and these multiple packages, theoretically, you could have more than one person working on it at any one time and not have those two people stepping on each other's toes, where, you know, somebody's working on, say, the music and sound effects code, and they're not changing the same class. They're not changing the VE class because they don't have to now. They can change their own classes, and then someone else could be changing something in VE class and not be stepping on them at the same time. And you're not doing a lot of merging and all that stuff. Merging is one of the hardest things usually for a developer to wrap their brain around. I'm actually pretty good at it from doing it for many years. Git's actually pretty good at automatically merging things, but there's still some times when even it's like, you guys both change the same line of code. I figure it out. What I've done here will help with that quite a bit. That said, nothing that I've done here is going to work or compile. So this is the one golden rule that I've found throughout every company that I've worked for, and that is, this is the point where you kind of sit back and you look at what you've done and you're like, well, all this is great, but I can't commit any of it. Now, since I'm using Git, I can commit it because I'm just committing it locally. But none of this can go out to the main repository because it's broken. And one of the things you'll find, no matter where you go, is one of the most basic rules is don't break the build. If you do break the build, fix the build. Don't leave until you fix the build, even if that means reverting back your changes that you've made. So that's the one universal constant that I've seen everywhere I've gone is don't break the build. If you do break the build, fix it, and don't leave don't leave it in a state that's broken overnight, because someone else is going to have to end up having to fix it, So I am going to stop here because I've been going for quite a while, several hours, in fact. And I'd like to come back and revisit this and do some more stuff and have like an episode 2 and actually continue with that. Now, I get that a lot of people watching the channel are not here for this, and I understand, but I love programming, and this is kind of the thing that I like, and this will just be one of those things that you're just not going to enjoy watching. But I think some people will, so we'll see what happens. We will see how this goes. And honestly, I just kind of want to do it just for the sake of doing something different for a change. It's kind of nice to just take something existing and just sort of do something a little bit different. Rather than just your rote Let's Plays over and over and over again. Not that there's anything wrong with Let's Plays, but it's kind of nice to sit on the other side too sometimes and just let everybody know that I'm not so up my own behind that I can't also appreciate the amount of work that it takes to get these games to a point where you can have a lot of player satisfaction and other things. So that is it for me, friends, for this episode. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and hopefully I will see you for episode 2.